The Seventh Continent is a film that came out in 1989 and is written and directed by Michael Haneke. So The Seventh Continent is this week's patron poll winner, and I still have to review the patron poll winner of a few weeks ago, which is Baraka, so be on the lookout for that soon. I already watched it, spoiler alert, I really liked it. But this is a film that I've been looking forward to seeing for quite some time, so obviously I was pretty excited to see that it won the patron poll, because I've seen a fair share of Michael Haneke films, and I pretty much really dig all of them. Piano Teacher is one that I think most people know about, besides Funny Games. That's a great film. Cachet is not only my favorite Michael Haneke film, but it's one of my favorite films of all time. I'm talking like, at the very least, top 10. Funny Games, obviously, as I mentioned, that was the first Michael Haneke film I was exposed to. Also a great film. I have a review on that as well. Amor is a masterful piece of filmmaking that is just fantastic, but also one of the most heartbreaking films that I've ever seen in my entire life. I have a whole video on that as well. Please check it out if you'd like to. But I've also seen Code Unknown, which is a film that I haven't really talked about. I don't have a video on. And it might be one of my lesser favorite Haneke films, but it's a film that I still think is great, and I think about it quite often. Maybe one of these days I'll do a review on it. But now we get to The Seventh Continent, which is actually Michael Haneke's directorial debut. And I understand that he made a lot of like made-for-TV kind of films before this, but most people consider this to be officially his directorial debut. And I gotta say, for a directorial debut, this film I found to be seriously impressive. And what's so beautiful about it is that even though this is his directorial debut, you can tell that this is Michael Haneke. You know, a lot of filmmakers kind of take a while to develop a sense of style and to kind of discover a confidence in a certain identity. Michael Haneke, like, if this is the first film that you watch from him, which I highly doubt it will be, but hypothetically if this was, this would basically set the tone and the standard of what you can kind of expect from his entire filmography. Because not only does this film have that type of minimalist and subtle approach to filmmaking that a lot of people really admire out of his work, but it also contains that incredibly bleak and just kind of dark approach to his themes and just overall content. And even though this is his first film, I think he's able to achieve that incredibly well. And in terms of like the structural, I guess, style of this film, it actually kind of reminded me of Code Unknown. In the sense that, at least like for the first 40 minutes or so, the way that the film is kind of presented to you is kind of like in splices and seems a bit fragmented. I mean, Code Unknown is a hell of a lot more fragmented than this film is. Don't get me wrong. Like, when you're watching Code Unknown, like, even though you're like an hour and 20 minutes in or so, you're still kind of wondering like where certain pieces fit, you know, who's related to who, how is that situation related to that situation. But, you know, after, like, I think the first 35 or 40 minutes of The Seventh Continent, you kind of get a grip on, you know, what's going on here. You kind of have an understanding of the characters and the narrative approach. And it's more linear, but just the way it's presented, you feel like you're kind of just getting, you know, quick little segments, because there's a lot of cuts to black and different time in their life to where you're not really sure if that actually took place after the moment that was previously presented. And I love the narrative approach and presentation to this film, because it is a film that is unforgiving with its pace. I mean, I personally didn't find it boring at all, so like, I wasn't bothered by the pace in the slightest. But it's a film that is intentionally paced in this kind of slow way that's intentionally keeping the audience on its toes as it kind of builds suspense and keeps them in mystery, because throughout this entire film, for the most part, you're not sure exactly where this film is going to head. And I actually really love that, because when it delivers in the third act, and it does deliver, trust me, I feel like it's that much more impactful, because when you get the third act, which in my opinion is incredibly uncomfortable and disturbing. I know that's kind of a simple word to use, especially when it comes to Haneke films, but it is quite unsettling and disturbing, but it's not unsettling and uncomfortable in the traditional way, because it's uncomfortable not through some sort of like shocking violence or some kind of grotesque display of bodily imagery or something like that. It's not disturbing in the same way that Gaspar Noé or Lars von Trier would go about making something disturbing, but it's actually just really unsettling through, I guess all I'll say is like a series of symbolic gestures. And these things, especially for people who obviously live in modern society, these things are incredibly uncomfortable to watch. And it goes on for quite some time. And Haneke is so relentless at just continuing to show the audience what this family is doing in the third act. And he does it so much that it just tends to break your heart, because all of the acts that they commit shows a complete detachment of where I believe a healthy mind should be. And it makes it that much more uncomfortable, but not only is it just really hard to watch, but it's also incredibly thematic. Because in my opinion, I feel like that the third act, and really this entire film in general, is layered with social commentary. Because it really made me think about the impacts that society, at least modern society, has on the human mind and the human spirit. I just think it does an excellent job at expressing the dangers of this kind of repetitive and stable lifestyle can have on the human mind, and can make a lot of people feel incredibly hollow and meaningless. And if you're not really acting towards a certain goal that you feel like is valuable, you can become incredibly detached. But I also think it's a commentary on the privileged lifestyle as well, in terms of just how it shows you this comfortability leads to this kind of repetitive lifestyle and can make you feel incredibly enslaved. When you feel like all of your societal goals have been met, you feel like you're not really aiming towards anything anymore, because you're not really, putting up through any suffering to achieve those goals. It can make you feel like pretty much dead inside. And that's honestly, like, if I had to interpret the symbolism of this beautiful piece of imagery, by the way, you see this image reoccurring throughout the film. And the first time you see it, it's basically a poster of an Australian beach. And it's later revealed in the film that this family is telling people that they're planning to move to Australia. And I feel like Australia is kind of symbolic for that blissful goal that they're trying to achieve, but it's achieved in a much more morbid way that this film represents. But what I love about the recurring piece of imagery that is this Australian beach is that the first time you see it, it's just a poster. It's a standstill poster of Australia. And as the film goes along, and I believe in the third act, you actually get the moving image of the beach. You can see the waves move along the beach side. And I think that not only is it just a stunning piece of imagery, but there's definitely a metaphorical and symbolic meaning to it. In terms of it's now moving, and the third act, the still image has now become a moving picture, because they've now, in a way, finally achieved this goal. At least that's kind of the way I interpreted it. But that's also something that I love about the film, because it's interpretive and it's ambiguous. And again, it's a subtle film, so like the motives behind why you think they, devolved into what they did is going to be open to interpretation. I mean, I think just from what I saw from the film, I think it's a bit clear, but it's subtle enough for people to kind of draw their own conclusions. The only thing that I'll say about the film is that, at least for me, like, I didn't feel emotionally attached to these characters. So, and I don't think, obviously I think Haneke wasn't going for that at all, but when this third act happens and the more unsettling and disturbing approach happens, I would have had a more profound emotional reaction to the material if the film just gave us a little bit more with the family. Like, if there was just a little bit more character substance, then perhaps I would have found it even more effective. But again, honestly, I think Haneke was going for something that kind of made it to where they're a bit on the blander side. That way, us as the audience can be a bit more terrified because we kind of see ourselves in the family. But for me personally, I felt pretty detached because the family themselves are incredibly detached. So even though I do think the third act is effective, I thought it just could have been a bit more impactful if it just gave us a little bit more. But either way, I am still a huge fan of Haneke's direction. I think it's incredibly impressive that even with his directorial debut, he establishes his sense of style and approach to filmmaking right out of the gate. And even beyond that, the writing, I think, is quite impressive stuff as well. I believe he wrote this like in a month, like 4 weeks. So even if this was like his 4th or 5th film, I would still be impressed by it. It just kind of makes it a bit more shocking and impressive that this is his directorial debut. So I'm going to give The Seventh Continent a solid 8 out of 10. By the way, this film, I believe, is for free on YouTube. Somebody uploaded it and YouTube didn't take it down. It's even got English subs, so go check it out. I didn't watch it there, but I heard it was a decent video. If you have an account with the Criterion channel, it's also streaming on the Criterion channel, so feel free to watch it on there as well. But yeah, Michael Haneke still has yet to disappoint me. I wish this was actually on Criterion, like the physical copy of Criterion, because this is something that I would definitely buy. I'll probably end up buying Code Unknown when next month comes around. Can't believe July is almost here. I am gonna go fucking broke. But anyway, that's all I gotta say about The Seventh Continent. If you really enjoyed what I had to say about it, please give it a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content.